All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. I apologize for the last minute notifications of this webinar. It's been a little bit of a busy week around here, I think, for everybody. But I do have a webinar list prepared, and I will be working on getting all of those entered under the events tab on the luggage website. So you'll be able to see those by going to the homepage of the luggage web development site, and they should populate right here in this center box. Today we're going to talk a little bit about image resizing and cropping in a flash. I have found in several of the meetings that I've had lately with folks that they're having a little bit of trouble sometimes knowing which tool to use or where to go to crop an image. Sometimes you have Photoshop, but that's a little bit scary if people haven't used Photoshop before. Sometimes there are student editors and they don't have something like Photoshop available. We've gone down the route of kind of going from a Mac option, like to use Preview, and I know I've done demonstrations with that. But that doesn't help the folks that have a PC and maybe use something like Paint. So it's a toss-up, and so I really wanted to just find something that could be maybe a free third-party tool that no matter what type of computer you're on, that you could use it. And I have to say that this is something that I just learned about like within the last few days. I've seen some of these tools myself in the past, but I haven't spent a whole lot of time. I'm a Photoshop user, so I'm a lot faster with something like Photoshop, and so I just thought that it would be fun if we explored something like this together so that you could get some practice as well and just have like a go-to. I know sometimes you're traveling or maybe you're on a different, like a loaner machine and you don't have the things you need. There's a lot of reasons that knowing of a tool is good. This is not something that is condoned by Iowa State in any way. This is something that's just a tool that our developers found, and some of them have used things like this before, and it's just something we're passing along to you. So this is not something that Iowa State necessarily promotes or purchased or anything like that. This is just an open tool, and so I just wanted to kind of clarify that up front. So with this tool, you will be able to resize and crop your photos. This is really, really handy. So let's talk a little bit about why we would want to do that. One thing that we have noticed, and I mentioned this in the potpourri webinar a while back, is that sometimes it's really easy to forget to pay attention to the size of the image that's being uploaded to the server or to your website. And we have lately seen several sites just have a little bit slower load time, or things move a little slower on our servers because of the size of images. And that is something that I'm hoping that we can get help with from our content editors, to be able to just upload images at a smaller size would just help us out quite a bit. So it's really easy to do, and hopefully you can just add this into your steps when you're uploading images. Now, when we look at websites, there's a couple different types of images that you all like to upload. So one would be maybe for something like a content card. So these content cards don't have to be a very large image. So when I think about, the width, the maximum width for an image like this, you probably could stick around 500 pixels and be okay, right? You don't have to have a very wide, like high resolution or a high pixel width for images like this. On web, keeping a 72 DPI is acceptable, and basically that's about as good as you're going to be able to view an image like digitally, like online. So if you go to print a 72 pixel image, obviously it'll be blurry, it'll be a little bit more blurred. And I'm not as concerned about the resolution. If you keep your resolution between 72 and 300, that's acceptable. It's just a matter of the size, the actual like pixel, the longest side of the image, pixel size is kind of what I'm looking at. So so you've got littler images like this that are maybe 500 pixels wide. And then we have images like the music and theater site that just launched that might have a lot larger. If you've got a hero banner, for example, these images you're going to want to have obviously a wider pixel width. So you could stick around. We say don't go over 2,000 pixels, and I think you'd be okay even at around 1,500 pixels wide. So some of the images that we've seen uploaded are well beyond that, and so make sure that you're not uploading like a 4,000 or 5,000 pixel wide image. We'll want, like I said, 1,500 to no greater than 2,000 pixels wide for something like this. And if you need help or assistance with that when you're getting started, just let us know. So that was kind of the motivator for looking at an online tool. So something to pay attention to with an online tool like LunaPic. This is what we're going to use, and I put a link in the chat for LunaPic so that you can see it. And I think John Rick just put a better one probably in there. So you can click on that and you'll be able to get to the same screen that I'm on right now. Before we get started, with some free tools like this one, it's going to be important to know what you're clicking on and where you're clicking, because as you can see, this thing is not too bad compared to some, but it's loaded with ads. All right, so I get that, I know that, and I want you to be very careful with that. So do not click on the ads, please, and make sure that you know kind of, that's why we're going to walk through this. Know kind of where you're clicking so that you're not going to click on an ad that might just be annoying. The first thing that you can do when you land here is you'll see something that says edit a photo, and you can click a browse button. So what this tool allows you to do is to browse your machine and find your picture folder, and I'll select one of these. I think, yeah, it doesn't really matter what it is. I'll just select one here. So it'll bring your image into LunaPic, and you can see that there are some options for you now. You can crop, scale, or rotate the picture. You can do some other things like add frames and that sort of thing, which I recommend not doing. I think what we're going to use this tool to do are basically two things. One, scale first, and then two, crop. So those are really the only two things that you're going to need to do with your images, and that I would recommend doing. So it's important to scale first, so that when you hit the scale button, you're going to be able to see that the width of this image is 1200 and the height is 536. When you select the word scale, that means in this program that the image will responsively change in size when you change one of the dimensions. If you choose a different option under edit other than scale, that doesn't necessarily mean that the image is going to scale proportionally or change size proportionally. So scale is the right word to look for in this program. We're going to first take a look at this, and I know that the content region area, so if I wanted to create a banner that's the width of the content region, and I'm trying to think, we'll just go to a website here. So this image here, this predictive plant phenomics image, is a bunch of images that they put together, and you can do something like that with Photoshop, and you might be able to do it with LunaPic, but I've not explored it. We're just looking at the width. You can see that the width of this image is the size of the content space here, region, whereas the music image, for example, is the full width of the website. So if we're looking to do something like this, like just a single banner image, we're going to want to make the image roughly, we know this from using luggage, roughly 1180 pixels wide. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oops, not 180, 1180. So just reduced it a bit, but you can imagine if you had a larger photo that would be beneficial, because now you're within range of the size that you need. So this will just make sure your width is going to be the proper width for it. Now, there's a lot of blue sky here, and there's some things that you may want to just crop. So knowing that you're at the proper width, now you can work on cropping the image. And so you can go to edit and say crop image. And now you'll be taken to a place where you can, I thought you could crop, just a second. I know that I just did this yesterday and I thought it was a little easier. Maybe I selected the wrong thing. Let's see. I want to for sure crop it. There we go. Okay. So I think what you have to do is select at the top. So let's see if I can go back to this. Edit, crop image. And at the top, it said to, you can select one of these tools at the top to use. And that's what I did. I selected crop. But first, I chose rectangle. And it took a second. You see that? So I chose rectangle and I hit clear, and like these buttons show up. So this is something that's probably just something with the tool that you might have to give it a chance to breathe. So select the crop option up here. And that's when you'll be taken to something that is a little more familiar to you. And again, there's options here for shape, but we don't necessarily, I'm not going to worry about that today. We're just going to go with the rectangle shape. So in this case, we know that we want the image to be the 1180 width. So I'm just going to drag these handlebars out to the width of the image. Looks like I'm a pixel off. I can see down here. Now I'm at 1180 width. And it will tell you what your height is. So now you can drag these handlebars, because it doesn't really matter to us when we're cropping the height of the image necessarily. It's really our own preference, right? So if we want an image that is a little taller, then we'll make it a little taller. If we want it more narrow, we can narrow it down. So this is just where we can kind of make those choices. And once we're done, we can say crop image, and our image is nicely cropped for a banner. And once we've done that, I think we can click save here, and the image now has shown up in my downloads folder, and it's right there. So we'll be able to now use this image to upload to our websites. And you can change the name of it or make it kind of what you want. Beyond that, I have not explored this tool, but I think that it's a fairly simple tool to use to resize. At this point, before I go in to move any further, there are a couple points that I just wanted to bring up with you that are helpful in helping to make your sites beautiful when it comes to images. But before that, are there any questions about general cropping or adjusting a photo, or maybe using a tool like this? If anybody else has additional tips or tools that they use that they'd be willing to share, please feel free to do that. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or ideas. Okay. Don't hesitate, and don't hesitate to put something in chat too if you would like. So one thing that we have really started to utilize and use are content cards. So we've got a lot of websites that are using these content cards to create really nice pages, right? So when we use content cards effectively, we can create some really beautiful pages with some beautiful pictures and information on them. And this is one that we recently did with PIDC. So something that they paid attention to and that happened here with these images was that they're all the same size image for the content cards in the row that they're in. So since content cards, we allow you to have a little bit more freedom. It's not something that we're going to automatically crop for you, like has been done in some of the features in the past. Because depending on how you want to utilize these content cards, you may want a little bit bigger image if you're using a 2/3 space, for example, and a smaller image for a 1/3 space and things like that. So the best thing to do, and what I recommend, is that if you have images in a row, like 3 images in the row, these 3 images in the top row, it's going to be really important that those 3 images are exactly the same size. So why is that? Basically, if they're not, what'll happen is that we aren't necessarily going to crop and scale each individual image, but we're going to scale the entire row as a whole to fill the content region on the front of the screen. So I think I can annotate here just a little bit. I want to try some of these new tools, and so we'll see if I can use them or not. So like this area here is the first row. And what we're going to do is we're going to end up taking, I'll take in blue, basically this entire section here, and resize it to fit the content region. All right. So you can imagine if you had different sized images, you may have a content card that ends up going down a little bit lower, and then you end up with some white space, and it may not look as good as you would hope. So that will just help you in that regard. One thing to also think about is that you don't necessarily have to have images that are square. These images are a little more rectangular. So what that does is it allows folks to see a beautiful image without having to scroll a whole bunch to get to the next row. And so it kind of makes it nice to do something like that. So are there any questions about the content card rows? Because this is something that I think will help a lot of people if you start using content cards in the future. The other thing that I wanted to mention was when you go to, let's see, create a page. So I'm just going to see if I can grab, let's go to NREM. I'll just go to create a page. And we'll see if it's possible, if I can quickly do this. What I want to do is, these may not be the right size, so I tried to make them smaller, but yeah, they're not. Okay. So let me go to a different space. Oh, it is the same. Okay. See if I can do this or not. I'm just going to upload 3 photos. All right. So something that we noticed right away in uploading these 3 photos is that we've got a horizontal photo, and a vertical photo. And I've seen folks want to do something like maybe put 3 images at the top of their page just to kind of draw some interest. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I feel like that's a totally okay thing to do. The great part about it is that when you do something like that, you're able to, the images will then like drop down when you resize the window. If you put like 3 images in a collage in Photoshop, for example, if you kind of do that sort of thing, or in one of these tools like Lunapic, you put them together, the entire set of 3 images are going to scale, so they're going to become quite small when you drop down and see that page on a mobile device. So how do we make these pictures look good together when one of them is a vertical image? So you can do something like this right in Luggage itself. So you can insert an image here, you can double click on it, and the important ratio to look at here is the height. So if we say, I'm going to make it a 200 pixel height, okay, so now we've got an image there. I'm going to insert the next one, and it's bigger. But again, I'm just going to make sure that the height is 200. Okay. And now we've got the vertical image. Insert. Double click. And we're going to make the height 200. So even though the width will be a little smaller with this one, it's still going to line up nicely with the other images. And you can double click and decide kind of how you want to handle it, if you want to caption them or not. And make sure you add alt text. I just am doing a demo here, but make sure you do that. The great part about this is that when you do resize your, I don't know if it'll do it since I'm in the editor, but yeah, it will. You can see how the images will drop down, so someone on mobile can actually see those and it doesn't look that bad. I think it's fine. If you had all 3 of these images collaged together as one image, you can imagine like they're going to get quite small on mobile. So I think that's okay. Now we don't want to go totally, you know, overboard and add a bunch of images like this, but I think 2 or 3 images, you know, here and there at the top or at the bottom of your content page is a nice thing to do, and that's just a quick way to do that. All right. So I think those are really the main points that I wanted to talk about today, just to kind of bring attention to it a little bit. And next month, I would like to talk about or show some neat example home pages, because you all are doing great work out there. We have launched some new sites. We have updated some styling on some sites that have been around for a long time, and they're starting to really look good. I've running into beautiful landing pages and home pages all the time, and so I felt like next month would be a fun time in July to just go through some of the nice landing pages and talk about what people are doing well on them and what made them look so good, so that you could take some of those things back for inspiration and continue to do the great things you're doing. So with that, are there any questions that you all have in regards to your own websites or things that you're working on, or questions that you have for editing wise? I'm just trying to see if anybody give you a chance, because I don't want you to not get that chance. Because this is really kind of what I like to call almost like an office hours. This is a really great, great thing. for that, and I really appreciate you all being here and participating in these webinars. So this will be recorded and we'll get it up online, and you'll be able to view it again at some point if you would like to see how to scale and crop the image. So, all right, with that, thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day.